always from the heart of the city, and now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to the warm January sun. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. The sun peeked out from behind the clouds for a while yesterday. I walked the dog down the long path that runs into a ravine near where we live. We were both warmed by the strong rays. In places, the snow and ice started to melt. It would freeze again by nightfall, but in that brief moment, I was reminded of the power of our nearest star. A warm January sun, this hour, with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Simply read in the sunrise. RyanDan like the sun and Elton John with Your Song. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com, and still battling this cold. Irma Bombeck in Field Newspaper Syndicate once commented, "Good kids are like sunsets. We take them for granted. Every evening they disappear. Most parents never imagine how hard they try to please us and how miserable they feel when they think they have failed." And John Berger from Ways of Seeing, published by Viking Penguin, wrote, "The relation between what we see and what we know is never settled. Each evening we see the sun set. We know that the earth is turning away from it. Yet knowledge, the explanation, never quite fits the sight." How true. John Berger from Ways of Seeing. Lovers and Other Strangers in the warm January sun. From iTunes and CHFI.com. Norah Jones and Sunrise. Van Morrison, Into the Mystic, and Rod Stewart, and Have I Told You Lately. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Helen Keller, who knew the power of the sun, felt, and I quote, "The hands of those I meet are dumbly eloquent to me. The touch of some hands is an impertinence. I've met people so empty of joy that when I clasped their frosty fingertips, it seemed as if I were shaking hands with a northeast storm. Others there are whose hands have sunbeams in them, so that their grasp warms my heart." Lovers and Other Strangers in the warm January sun. From iTunes and CHFI.com. Leann Rhymes and How Do I Live Without You, and Bill Withers and Ain't No Sunshine. And I'm Don Jackson with this terrible cold still, with Lovers and Other Strangers. Victor Hugo in Les Mis, translated by Norman Denny, published by the Folio Society, wrote, "Nothing is more pleasant than greenery washed by the rain and dried by the sun into cleanliness and warmth. Gardens and meadows with moisture at their roots and sunshine on their blossoms become jars of incense, each giving out its scent. The world smiles and bestows itself, and we feel a gentle intoxication. The sun teaches men to endure." And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in To Live and to Die, edited by Robert H. Williams and published by Springer Verlag, New York, wrote, and I quote, "People are like stained glass windows. They sparkle and shine when the sun is out. But when the darkness sets in, their true beauty is revealed only if there is a light from within." And Bob Perks, American inspirational author and speaker, wrote, "I wish you enough rain to appreciate the sun more." Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Stevie Wonder, You Are the Sunshine of My Life. Beyonce with Halo. And Gerry and the Pacemakers and Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Well, the holidays now are finally over. I hope you had the opportunity to spend this special time of the year with family and friends. William Houseman from House Beautiful some years back wrote, and I quote, "By its nature, of course, holiday homecoming is not calculated to inspire unbridled emotional highs. Going home derives from rediscovering the joys of familiarity. There is the old, reassuring bed, therapeutically obsolete though it be. It's your bed. The tick of the clock, the slam of the door, the creak of the steps. They too may be among your personally prized associations. Even the rising sun may be a personal possession. If the sunlight enters a certain window, you remember it entering, then that is where it is supposed to enter. By clear inference, the sun therefore rises where it's supposed to, and for the best of all reasons, you're at home." William Houseman from House Beautiful. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Ellie Weasel from All Rivers Run to the Sea, published by Knopf, wrote, "And yet." Those are my two favorite words, applicable to every situation, happy or bleak. The sun is rising, and yet it will set. A night of anguish, and yet it too will pass. The important thing is to shun resignation, to refuse to wallow in sterile fatalism." Unquote. And Guy Murchie in Music of the Spheres, published by Houghton Mifflin, wrote, and I quote, "When a man feels weary or depressed or in pain, just stepping into clear sunshine does something to him. I have felt it often. Sunshine is manifestly more than heat and light and invisible rays, even as the whole can be greater than the sum of the parts. It is something subtler, nearer the spiritual, something close to the quick of life itself. It seems to me that the sun has in some degree the quality of a patriarchal blessing, a bestowal of that feeling of security that comes through the love of dear parents still living in the old family homestead where one was born and raised. For the sun is truly the birthstead of the whole earth." Unquote. Guy Murchie in Music of the Spheres, published by Houghton Mifflin. January Sun, this hour. For Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.